Fire 4 brothers ordered mail-order brides, but 4 hidden sisters stepped down from the carriage. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the sprawling farmland that stretched across the horizon. The 4 brothers had been waiting for this day for months. Each of them had imagined it in their own way: quiet evenings with a kind companion, laughter around the dinner table, and someone to share the work of the land with. The idea of mail-order brides had seemed practical to them. In a place as remote as their farm, finding partners wasn't easy, and the promise of new beginnings filled them with hope. Early in the morning, the brothers had checked and rechecked the fences, repaired the barn, and polished the farmhouse until it gleamed. Even the animals seemed to sense the excitement, moving with unusual energy. The horses pranced in their stalls, the cows mooed more loudly than usual, and the dogs wagged their tails so fast that their entire bodies shook. Everything seemed perfect, as though nature itself was welcoming the day. By noon, a carriage was spotted on the distant gravel road, slowly making its way toward the farmhouse. The brothers' hearts beat faster. They stood side by side, adjusting their hats and straightening their shirts, though their nerves made them fidget despite their attempts to look calm. John, the eldest, had been the most cautious about the whole plan, but even he could not hide the excitement in his eyes. Tom, the second brother, whispered under his breath, imagining the brides they had chosen with care from photographs sent months ago. Each brother thought of what their life would be like once the women arrived, how the evenings would change, how the farm would feel warmer, how their lonely hearts might finally find a home. The carriage drew closer, its wheels crunching over the gravel in a steady rhythm. The driver, a tall man in a dusty coat, guided the horses with practiced ease, and the brothers could finally make out the shapes of the women inside. They had expected 4 brides, one for each brother, and their minds were filled with nervous anticipation. But when the doors of the carriage swung open, the brothers' plans turned upside down. 8 women stepped down from the carriage, not 4 as they had been told. 4 of the women smiled warmly at the brothers, the very ones they had been expecting. But the other 4, sisters to the original brides, appeared behind them, standing with quiet confidence. The hidden sisters had kept their travel secret, stepping forward only when the carriage stopped at the farmhouse. Their arrival was as much a surprise to the brothers as it was thrilling. The brothers froze, their mouths slightly open in shock. Their carefully planned day suddenly became something else entirely. John rubbed his eyes, thinking perhaps he had miscounted. Tom shuffled his feet nervously, unsure whether to speak first. The other 2 brothers, William and Henry, exchanged glances, each realizing that this day would be far more complicated than they had imagined. The women began introducing themselves. The intended brides stepped forward first, offering polite smiles and soft greetings. Their hidden sisters followed, their eyes bright and curious, full of determination and a sense of adventure. The brothers listened as the sisters spoke in gentle voices, sharing bits of their stories along with light laughter. Each introduction seemed to reveal a new layer of personality, a new challenge to the assumptions the brothers had made. The farmhouse suddenly felt smaller but more alive. The brothers had imagined a quiet, predictable day, but instead, the air buzzed with energy and possibilities. The hidden sisters carried themselves with independence and pride. They were not simply there to follow plans. They were there to be noticed, to be acknowledged as individuals with thoughts and feelings of their own. Their presence challenged the brothers in ways they had not anticipated. For a few moments, everyone stood there silently, absorbing the reality of the situation. The crisp autumn air made it feel sharper, more urgent, as though nature itself was emphasizing the surprise. The women's dresses swirled slightly with the breeze, and the horses shifted nervously, as though sensing the tension and excitement. It was a moment suspended in time, a moment where expectations met reality and neither could ignore the other. The brothers quickly realized that their plans for easy companionship and orderly introductions would not work. The hidden sisters were clever, observant, and ready to assert themselves. One of them, a young woman with dark hair and bright eyes, stepped forward and spoke confidently, introducing herself not just as a sister, but as someone who had a voice and opinions. Her words were clear, her tone polite but firm, and the brothers felt a mixture of admiration and uncertainty. As the women helped themselves down from the carriage, the brothers noticed small details they hadn't expected. The sisters carried themselves with strength and grace. Their eyes sparkled with intelligence and curiosity. They had traveled in secret, planned quietly, and now stood before strangers with courage. Each brother felt a pang of respect and wonder at the determination these women had shown to be here, to take a step into a world that was unknown to them. After the initial shock, introductions began more formally. The intended brides spoke of their journey, the long travel over winding roads, and the excitement of arriving at the farm. The hidden sisters added their own stories, tales of secrecy, courage, and a strong bond with their sisters that had carried them through the journey. The farmhouse, once silent, was now filled with voices, laughter, and the soft hum of conversation. Despite the initial surprise, the brothers could not help but feel a sense of awe. They had prepared for this day in one way, but life had offered them a new experience, one that promised more complexity, more depth, and perhaps more joy than they had expected. The women were not simply companions to be assigned. They were individuals, full of dreams and ambitions, and the brothers realized they would need to meet them as equals rather than as answers to a plan. By the time the sun touched the horizon, the women had been shown into the farmhouse. The brothers had arranged the rooms carefully, and now they wondered how to manage the 8 women under one roof. It was a challenge they had not anticipated, but the sense of adventure of stepping into the unknown was thrilling. The farmhouse felt warmer, not because of the fire in the hearth, but because of the presence of so many lives ready to intersect, to create a story together. The first evening was quiet yet charged with possibilities. The brothers and sisters gathered around the dining table, sharing a simple meal, each bite tasting sweeter for the excitement of the day. Stories were exchanged, questions asked, and laughter began to fill the spaces that had been empty for so long. The hidden sisters, though cautious, had begun to weave themselves into the fabric of this household, and the brothers found themselves drawn into conversations they hadn't expected, learning more about these women than any photograph or letter could convey. As night fell and the stars began to dot the sky, the brothers stepped outside for a moment. The farm was silent, bathed in moonlight, yet the energy inside promised change, adventure, and perhaps love in ways they had never imagined. They realized that life could not always be planned, and sometimes the surprises it offered were far richer than the dreams one could hold in a mind alone. The carriage had brought them 8 women, not 4, and while the day had started with shock and uncertainty, it ended with a feeling of anticipation. There was a sense that the coming days would be filled with challenges, lessons, and new bonds forming, not just between the brothers and the women, but among the sisters themselves. Life on the farm would never be the same, and for the first time in years, each brother felt the thrill of possibility. The night was quiet now, but sleep would not come easily. Each brother lay awake, thinking of the women who had arrived, of the stories shared, of the laughter and the confidence that filled the rooms. They understood that the hidden sisters had changed everything, not just the plan, but the very heart of their home. The farm, the fields, and the farmhouse were now alive with the presence of 8 women who would shape the lives of 4 brothers in ways unimaginable. The morning light spilled over the farm, golden and soft, as if nature itself was welcoming a new beginning. The 4 brothers woke to the sounds of the women moving about the house, footsteps on the wooden floor, quiet laughter, and the gentle rustle of dresses. The farm had felt lonely for years, but now, with 8 women in the home, every corner seemed alive with energy. Even the animals seemed to sense the change. The horses neighed softly, the chickens clucked with curiosity, and the dogs padded along the hallways, noses twitching as if they were trying to understand the new order of life. Breakfast was a lively affair. The brothers had expected a quiet meal with just 4 women, but now the farmhouse was buzzing. Plates clinked, voices mingled, and conversations flowed in ways that made everyone laugh and sometimes stumble over words. The women, both the brides and their hidden sisters, introduced themselves more fully this time. They shared small stories of their journey, the places they had passed, the countryside they had seen, and even the challenges of traveling in secret. Each tale revealed a strength and courage that surprised the brothers. John, the eldest brother, had always been cautious, and today he watched closely, trying to understand how to navigate this new household. He noticed how the sisters interacted with each other, supportive, teasing, and protective. The hidden sisters were quick to help their siblings, fetching cups of coffee or lending a hand with chores. but they also had a spark of independence. They weren't there just to follow orders. They were there to live, to make decisions, and to shape their own experience. This realization both thrilled and unsettled the brothers, who had never had to share control of their home with anyone else. Tom, the second brother, found himself drawn to the youngest of the hidden sisters. She had an easy smile and a way of speaking that made everyone feel welcome. She wasn't shy or quiet. Instead, she moved through the kitchen with purpose, setting plates and offering advice about breakfast preparations. Tom realized that her presence challenged him in ways he hadn't expected. She wasn't simply a companion. She was someone who would push him to think, to listen, and to consider perspectives he had never thought about before. Meanwhile, William and Henry faced similar challenges. One of the brides, a calm and thoughtful woman, shared stories of her hometown and her family, revealing depth and intelligence that both brothers admired. Her sister, who had come secretly, had a playful side that made Henry laugh, even when he was trying to stay serious. These dynamics created a mix of excitement and tension, as the brothers realized they had not just gained companions but individuals with unique personalities, each shaping the atmosphere in the farmhouse. After breakfast, the workday began. The farm was large and demanding, and chores needed to be divided fairly. The women, eager to contribute, stepped forward without hesitation. The brothers had assumed they would need to manage the work and guide the women, but they soon discovered that these women were resourceful, capable, and unafraid of hard labor. Some tended to the livestock, brushing and feeding the horses, while others worked in the fields, helping to repair fences or plant seeds for the coming season. The hidden sisters often paired with their siblings, working together in a silent rhythm that displayed years of cooperation and understanding. As the day progressed, the brothers watched in awe. Tasks that had once felt mundane or exhausting became lighter with the presence of the women. They laughed when a young calf refused to be milked. They celebrated small victories when fences were repaired, and they marveled at the efficiency and skill the women brought to every task. Even in moments of frustration or difficulty, there was a sense of camaraderie forming, a bond that grew stronger with every shared experience. During a quiet moment in the afternoon, John found himself alone with the eldest hidden sister. She had a quiet confidence, and her eyes reflected intelligence and determination. She spoke about her reasons for traveling with her sister, explaining that she wanted to ensure her sibling was safe and that she valued family above all. John listened, realizing that these women were not only brave but also deeply loyal. Their presence was not just a surprise. It was a gift that promised lessons, companionship, and perhaps love in ways he had never imagined. Meanwhile, in the farmhouse, the other brothers were navigating their own relationships. Tom was learning to communicate patiently with the young hidden sister, understanding that her assertiveness was not a challenge but an expression of her character. William found himself enjoying quiet conversations with his bride, discovering common interests and values that created a sense of partnership. Henry, too, was beginning to see the humor, warmth, and depth in the women, realizing that their presence brought more joy than he had thought possible. Evening arrived, and the farmhouse glowed with the warmth of the fire. The men and women gathered in the living room, sharing stories of the day. Laughter filled the space as minor accidents in the fields were recounted, and small victories were celebrated with cheer. The hidden sisters, bravery and cleverness became apparent as they offered solutions to problems, comforted younger siblings, and suggested improvements for farm routines. The brothers could not help but feel admiration and respect, realizing that the household was becoming more than a simple arrangement. It was turning into a family. Yet, despite the laughter and achievements, tensions remained beneath the surface. Each brother was aware of the unexpected challenges of managing relationships with multiple strong, intelligent women. They realized that their assumptions about quiet, obedient companions were not realistic. Instead, they had been gifted individuals with opinions, ambitions, and desires, all of whom deserved respect and consideration. This awareness was both humbling and enlightening, forcing the brothers to grow in patience, understanding, and empathy. Dinner was a lively affair, with conversations flowing freely. The sisters shared stories of their childhood, of hopes and dreams, and even the struggles they had faced while traveling. The intended brides spoke of their excitement and anxiety about joining the brothers' lives. The hidden sisters added layers to these narratives, revealing courage, intelligence, and wit. Through these conversations, the brothers began to see each woman as a complete person, not merely as a companion or a solution to loneliness. After dinner, some of the women helped with household chores, while others retreated to quieter corners to write letters home or rest. The brothers took a moment to step outside, breathing in the cool evening air. The farm was calm now, bathed in the soft glow of moonlight, yet inside, the warmth of human connection filled every room. They reflected on the day's events, the challenges, the surprises, and the bonds that were beginning to form. For the first time, they understood that life was richer and more unpredictable than they had imagined. As night fell, the brothers and sisters prepared for bed, each thoughtful about the day and what lay ahead. The hidden sisters, though tired from travel, remained alert, aware of the need to support their siblings while also asserting their own presence. The brothers lay awake for a while, considering the dynamics of the household. They realized that patience, understanding, and open communication would be key to building trust and harmony. The challenges of the day had taught them humility, respect, and the value of partnership in unexpected forms. Even as sleep approached, thoughts of the women's courage, wit, and kindness lingered. The brothers recognized that their expectations had been too narrow, that life could offer surprises far beyond careful planning. They felt gratitude, curiosity, and even excitement for the days to come. The women were not only companions, they were teachers, friends, and potential partners in a life full of discovery. The farmhouse, quiet now under the moonlit sky, felt different than it had before. It was no longer a home of isolation or predictable routine. It had become a place of connection, growth, and possibility. The events of the day had shown that life often unfolded in ways that could not be anticipated, and that true happiness often arose from embracing the unexpected. In the days that followed, the brothers would face more surprises, more lessons, and more moments that tested their patience and courage. But the foundation had been laid on this first day, the realization that respect, understanding, and kindness could guide the household toward harmony and joy. The women had arrived not just to fill roles, but to transform lives, creating bonds that would last far beyond the initial shock and excitement of their arrival. As the brothers finally drifted to sleep, the sounds of quiet breathing and gentle movement filled the farmhouse. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying the promise of change and adventure. The journey had begun, and each day promised growth, learning, and the unfolding of relationships that would define the future of the farm. The brothers understood now that this was only the beginning. 8 women, each with a story, a personality, and a will of their own, had entered their lives. The surprises of the day had shown them that life was richer and more unpredictable than they had imagined. And as they slept, hearts full of curiosity and hope, they knew that the days ahead would be filled with lessons, laughter, and the kind of bonds that could last a lifetime. The next morning dawned with a crisp chill in the air, and the farmhouse buzzed with quiet activity. The women moved gracefully through the rooms, preparing breakfast, tending to the smaller chores, and organizing the household with a skill that surprised even the brothers. The farm, which had once been quiet and orderly, was now alive with energy and the hum of daily life. It seemed that every corner of the property held a story, and the presence of 8 women made every task feel lighter, more vibrant, and more full of promise. John, the eldest brother, stood at the edge of the barn, watching the women work. The hidden sisters moved with purpose, assisting their siblings without hesitation, yet maintaining a sense of independence. They did not simply follow instructions. They observed, suggested improvements, and offered their own ideas. John felt a mix of admiration and humility. He realized that the women were shaping the farm and their lives in ways he had never anticipated. This was not a simple arrangement. It was the start of a true partnership, and it required patience, understanding, and respect. Tom had taken to spending the morning helping with the horses, while keeping an eye on the youngest hidden sister. She had a light-hearted nature that made every task feel easier, but she was also keenly observant. She noticed small details, the way a fence post had weakened, how a saddle didn't fit correctly, and spoke up with helpful suggestions. Tom began to appreciate her intelligence and courage. realizing that this woman was not merely a companion but someone who could challenge him to grow, to see things from a new perspective, and to embrace change rather than fear it. In the kitchen, William and Henry worked alongside their brides and their sisters, learning quickly that cooperation required communication. One of the brides, calm and practical, showed William how to plan meals efficiently for such a large household. Her hidden sister added suggestions for preserving food, organizing supplies, and even ways to care for the animals more effectively. Henry watched the playful interactions between his bride and her sister, laughing when they teased each other gently, and appreciating the bond that already existed between them. These moments of connection reminded him that family was more than blood. It was the trust, support, and understanding that people offered one another. The farm work continued into the afternoon. The women took the lead in several tasks, guiding the brothers where necessary, but also allowing them to participate. A stubborn calf refused to move into its stall, and while the brothers struggled to control it, one of the hidden sisters calmly approached, speaking to the animal in a gentle voice. Within moments, the calf obeyed, as if sensing her patience and kindness. The brothers exchanged glances, impressed by her quiet confidence. This was not the behavior of someone seeking attention. It was the skill of someone who understood animals, people, and the delicate balance of care and authority. Meanwhile, John and the eldest hidden sister walked together through the fields, inspecting the fences. She had a thoughtful expression as she considered the land, and he listened intently as she shared ideas about crop rotation, livestock care, and the future of the farm. Her insights were practical, yet infused with creativity and foresight. John felt a sense of respect growing within him. This woman was not just visiting, she was contributing, shaping the farm, and earning a place in their lives through wisdom and courage. Tom found himself learning as much from the youngest hidden sister as he did from the work itself. She questioned some of his methods, suggesting adjustments that made the tasks easier and more effective. He initially bristled, not used to someone challenging his way of doing things, but he quickly realized that her advice was practical and insightful. Gradually, he learned to value her input, to see her as a partner in problem-solving rather than a challenge to authority. This shift in perspective began to change the way he approached the day, fostering cooperation, respect, and shared effort. As the afternoon progressed, the sisters began to share more of their personal stories. One of the brides spoke about her childhood in a distant town, the values instilled in her by her parents, and the dreams she had for her future. Her hidden sister added tales of adventures, challenges, and lessons learned while traveling in secret to join her sibling. The brothers listened, fascinated by the depth, courage, and determination of these women. Each story revealed another layer of character, another reason to admire and respect them. The dynamics within the farmhouse began to evolve. Small disagreements arose, not conflicts, but natural differences in opinion. One sister preferred a different method of tending the garden, another suggested a change in how the animals were fed. At first, the brothers felt uncertain about how to handle these differences. They had expected quiet compliance, but instead they were encountering strong, intelligent women with their own ideas. Yet these differences did not create tension. Rather, they became opportunities to learn, to listen, and to compromise. The household was slowly discovering that respect and understanding were more valuable than obedience. By late afternoon, the sun cast long shadows across the farm, and the group gathered in the yard to rest. Conversations flowed naturally, laughter punctuated by thoughtful moments. The women shared their hopes and dreams, not only for themselves, but also for the future of the farm and the family they were beginning to form. The brothers began to see that these women were not just passengers in their lives. They were partners, teachers, and friends. Their presence brought insight, skill, and energy that had been missing for years, and the brothers felt a deep sense of gratitude. John and the eldest hidden sister took a quiet walk to the edge of the property, where the fields met a small wooded area. They spoke softly, sharing observations about the farm and their vision for the future. She expressed a desire for balance, hard work, yes, but also joy, creativity, and shared responsibility. John listened, realizing that these conversations were teaching him about life, leadership, and the value of true partnership. It was a lesson he would carry throughout his life, shaped not by authority but by collaboration. Back at the farmhouse, Tom and the youngest hidden sister were preparing dinner alongside the other women. The kitchen was filled with aromas of bread, roasted vegetables, and simmering stews. Conversations continued, full of teasing, gentle humor, and shared memories. The women worked together seamlessly, guiding the brothers in small ways while also allowing them to contribute meaningfully. It was a dance of cooperation, learning, and respect, building bonds that were both practical and deeply personal. As the evening approached, the group gathered around the fireplace. The light from the fire flickered across faces full of warmth, energy, and curiosity. Stories were exchanged, laughter echoed through the rooms, and even the quiet moments were filled with a sense of connection. The brothers reflected on the day's events, realizing that the arrival of the hidden sisters had transformed more than their plans. They had transformed the household, the work, and the very way they viewed relationships. Tensions had been managed with care, surprises had been embraced, and bonds had begun to form. The women were not only companions but also teachers, guides, and friends. Each brother felt a growing admiration for the women before them, recognizing the strength, courage, and wisdom they brought to every task, every conversation, and every moment of life on the farm. As night settled, the farmhouse became quiet, but the energy of the day lingered. The brothers lay in their rooms, reflecting on what they had learned. Patience, humility, and open-mindedness had been required, and they had discovered that life was richer and more rewarding when surprises were embraced rather than resisted. The women had arrived not just to live with them, but to shape them, teach them, and challenge them in ways that were unexpected and profound. Outside, the moon shone over the fields, illuminating the barn, the fences, and the trees. The wind whispered softly, as if acknowledging the changes that had occurred, the bonds that were forming, and the adventures yet to come. The farm was no longer just a place of work. It had become a place of life, learning, and growth. The brothers realized that they were witnessing the beginning of something remarkable, a household filled with energy, courage, and love in its many forms. Sleep finally came, gentle and restorative, but dreams were filled with possibilities. The brothers imagined the days ahead, more farm work, more learning, more laughter, and perhaps the slow unfolding of affection and trust. They understood now that the household would never be simple. That life with these women would require patience, empathy, and cooperation. But they also recognized the profound rewards that came with these efforts. The women, too, lay awake for a while, thinking of the challenges and opportunities of life in the farmhouse. The hidden sisters had succeeded in joining their siblings safely, but now they faced the delicate task of establishing relationships, earning trust, and carving out their own space in this new world. They were not merely guests. They were part of a living, breathing household with all the responsibilities, joys, and surprises that entailed. By the next morning, the routine was beginning to take shape. The brothers and women had learned lessons from each other, discovering ways to cooperate, communicate, and respect one another. The bonds that were forming were not superficial. They were grounded in shared experience, mutual respect, and the growing understanding that life was richer when shared with others who brought strength, courage, and intelligence to the table. The farm, bathed in the morning sun, seemed to glow with possibility. Tasks awaited, stories would be shared, and challenges would come. But for the first time in years, the brothers felt a sense of anticipation, excitement, and hope that went far beyond their initial expectations. Life had presented them with surprises, and they had embraced them, learning that growth often came from the unexpected, and joy from shared effort, understanding, and kindness. The morning air was cool and crisp, carrying the scent of earth, hay, and the faint sweetness of autumn. Flowers. Life on the farm was no longer quiet or predictable. The farmhouse hummed with activity as the brothers and women moved about, each occupied with the chores of the day. Yet beneath the ordinary rhythm of work, there was a new tension, subtle but noticeable. The bonds that had begun forming over the past days were being tested, and the brothers realized that understanding and patience would be required more than ever. The day began with tasks in the fields. John and William set out to repair a section of fence that had been damaged in a recent storm, while Tom and Henry took the horses to the far pasture to check on their condition. The women paired up, some working alongside their intended partners and some with their hidden sisters. There was laughter, light teasing, and an easy camaraderie, but there were also small disagreements. One of the hidden sisters suggested a different approach to fixing the fence, and John, accustomed to doing things in his way, hesitated. He realized quickly, however, that her method was more efficient, and he followed her lead, learning once again that these women were not just companions. They were thinkers, problem solvers, and equal partners in every sense. Meanwhile, in the pasture, Tom struggled to move a stubborn horse into the corral. The youngest hidden sister stepped forward, calmly speaking to the animal in a gentle tone. The horse, sensing her patience and confidence, allowed itself to be guided. Tom's admiration grew, tempered by a small pang of envy. He realized that her abilities and calm presence sometimes outshone his own. It was a lesson in humility, and he accepted it, feeling both challenged and inspired by her courage and intelligence. Back in the farmhouse, Henry and William were learning their own lessons. The brides had grown comfortable taking initiative, offering advice and suggestions in ways that sometimes surprised the brothers. A disagreement arose over how to organize the household chores. One of the hidden sisters wanted a schedule that differed from what the brothers had in mind. Initially, the brothers felt frustration. Their plans had been disrupted, and they were not used to having their authority questioned. But as they listened, they began to understand the wisdom behind the suggestions. It was a moment of learning, demonstrating that leadership was not about control, but about listening, adapting, and finding the best solution for everyone. By midday, the sun was high, and the work was nearly complete. The women had been instrumental in accomplishing more than the brothers could have expected. Repairs had been made, animals cared for, and the farm looked more organized and efficient than it had in months. Yet with the successes came moments of tension. Small misunderstandings arose, as they always do when people live and work closely together. A suggestion made in good faith was misinterpreted, a teasing remark was taken too seriously, and emotions ran higher than the calm faces would suggest. The brothers gathered the women for a brief break under the shade of an old oak tree. They offered cold water and simple snacks, and the conversation turned to more personal matters. The hidden sisters spoke of their lives before the journey, times of struggle, moments of courage, and dreams they still held for the future. Their words were honest and heartfelt, and the brothers listened, realizing that these women had not arrived to simply live under their roof. They had arrived to share their lives fully, to be heard, and to shape the household alongside them. One particular story caused a quiet pause among everyone. The eldest hidden sister recounted a time when she had taken responsibility for her younger siblings during a difficult journey. Her voice was steady, but there was a deep emotion underlying her words. She spoke of sacrifice, loyalty, and the strength that comes from protecting those you love. The brothers were struck by her courage and determination. It was a reminder that the women in front of them had lives rich with experience, and that their presence on the farm was not a simple gift. They were individuals who had faced challenges and had emerged stronger. As the afternoon continued, the work shifted to smaller tasks around the farmhouse. The women cleaned, organized, and prepared meals, while the brothers handled heavier labor in the barn and the yard. But even in these quieter moments, the tension of adjustment was present. The brothers and sisters were learning to live together, to share responsibilities, and to respect each other's opinions. Differences of perspective sometimes led to minor arguments, but these conflicts were not destructive. They were opportunities for growth, understanding, and deeper connection. John found himself reflecting on the lessons of the day as he repaired a gate near the orchard. He realized that life on the farm had changed dramatically since the arrival of the hidden sisters. Their independence, intelligence, and courage had challenged him to rethink his assumptions, to listen more carefully, and to embrace a more collaborative approach. He understood that leadership on the farm was not about giving orders. It was about guidance, cooperation, and mutual respect. Tom, meanwhile, took a moment to observe the youngest hidden sister as she worked with her sister to feed the animals. Her patience, skill, and attention to detail were remarkable, and he felt both admiration and a growing fondness. He realized that her presence had enriched his life, not only through her abilities but through her character. He began to see that love, trust, and respect were built through shared experience, kindness, and understanding, rather than through plans or expectations. In the farmhouse, William and Henry were navigating similar revelations. The brides and their hidden sisters demonstrated intelligence, compassion, and courage in ways that challenged the brothers' previous assumptions. Household chores became lessons in collaboration, negotiation, and communication. The brothers learned that compromise did not mean weakness. It meant understanding, empathy, and the ability to see value in different perspectives. As evening approached, the group gathered for dinner. The air was filled with the aroma of roasted vegetables, fresh bread, and stews simmered over the hearth. Conversation flowed naturally, with laughter, teasing, and thoughtful discussion. The sisters shared more stories, this time about hopes for the future, dreams of family, and ambitions they wished to pursue. The brothers listened, increasingly aware that these women were not passive companions. They were individuals with ideas, goals, and passions. During dinner, a moment of tension arose when a misunderstanding led to a brief argument over seating arrangements. The brothers had intended for a simple order, but the women had their own ideas, and voices rose slightly. However, the conflict was resolved quickly, with patience, humor, and honest communication. The brothers realized that disagreements were not a sign of failure. They were a natural part of learning to live together and respecting each other's opinions. After the meal, the group gathered by the fireplace. The glow of the fire highlighted the warmth in their faces and the shared understanding that had begun to grow. Conversations turned to dreams, plans, and reflections on the day's events. Laughter mingled with moments of quiet contemplation, creating a rhythm of connection that strengthened bonds between brothers and sisters alike. John took a quiet walk outside with the eldest hidden sister, the cool night air brushing against their faces. They spoke softly about the future of the farm, the challenges they would face, and the ways in which they could work together to overcome them. She offered suggestions with wisdom and insight, and John felt a deep respect growing within him. Her presence had changed not only the household, but his understanding of life, leadership, and partnership. Meanwhile, Tom and the youngest hidden sister walked along the edge of the orchard, observing the moonlight casting silver shadows across the trees. They spoke about the day, shared small stories, and laughed at minor mishaps that had occurred. Tom realized that his admiration for her was growing into something deeper. Her courage, intelligence, and kindness had touched him profoundly, teaching him lessons he had never expected to learn. Back in the farmhouse, William and Henry were reflecting on their own experiences. The brides and their hidden sisters had transformed the household into something more than a home. It had become a place of learning, understanding, and shared responsibility. The challenges of the day had revealed not only the strength and courage of the women, but also the growth of the brothers. They were learning patience, empathy, and the value of listening, understanding, and respecting others. As the night deepened, the farmhouse grew quiet, but the energy of the day lingered. Everyone had learned lessons, faced challenges, and strengthened connections. The hidden sisters had proven themselves capable, intelligent, and brave, earning respect and admiration from the brothers. The household had experienced both conflict and cooperation, laughter and reflection, creating bonds that were real, meaningful, and lasting. The brothers lay awake in their rooms, thinking of the women's courage, kindness, and wisdom. They realized that life on the farm would never be the same. The arrival of the hidden sisters had transformed more than their daily routines. It had transformed their understanding of partnership, family, and love. They knew that the days ahead would bring further challenges, but they were ready to face them with patience, understanding, and openness. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the promise of change, growth, and adventure. The farm, bathed in moonlight, reflected the lives of all who lived there. Brothers and sisters, brides and hidden sisters, each shaping the household, teaching and learning from one another, and creating a story of courage, connection, and hope. As sleep finally claimed them, the brothers dreamed of the days to come. They imagined challenges and triumphs, moments of learning, laughter, and connection. The hidden sisters had not only joined their household, they had transformed it, teaching lessons of resilience, courage, and the power of understanding. Life on the farm was richer, more vibrant, and more meaningful than they had ever imagined. The morning sun rose gently over the farm, painting the fields in soft shades of gold. The crisp air carried the faint scent of hay, wildflowers, and the warmth of the farmhouse that had become home to 4 brothers and 8 remarkable women. Life on the farm had changed completely since the day the carriage arrived. What had started as a shock, a surprise, and a challenge had grown into a household filled with energy, cooperation, and hope. The day began as usual, with the brothers rising early to check on the animals and the women moving through the house to prepare breakfast and plan the day's work. But today felt different. There was a sense of harmony in the air, a rhythm that had been slowly developing over weeks of shared effort, laughter, and learning. The men and women had discovered how to live together, how to support one another, and how to respect each other's strengths and differences. John, the eldest brother, walked through the orchard, observing the women as they worked. The eldest hidden sister moved with confidence and purpose, organizing the harvest of apples and guiding her younger sister with gentle but firm instructions. John smiled to himself, realizing that the household was no longer about control or plans. It was about partnership, collaboration, and shared effort. He felt a deep respect for these women who had brought so much life, intelligence, and energy to the farm. Tom was in the stables with the youngest hidden sister. Together, they cared for the horses, brushing their coats and checking their hooves. Tom marveled at her patience and skill. She seemed to understand the animals in a way he never had, speaking to them in calm, soothing tones that made even the most stubborn horses respond. He realized that her courage, intelligence, and kindness were matched by a quiet wisdom. Tom felt a growing admiration and something deeper, a gentle warmth in his heart that he could not ignore. In the fields, William and one of his brides worked side by side, planting seeds and repairing fences. The bride's hidden sister assisted, offering suggestions and observing carefully how the work was done. William appreciated her insight and realized that her perspective, combined with her sister's skills, made the day's work smoother, faster, and more enjoyable. He began to understand that life was richer when shared, and that true partnership came from respect, cooperation, and trust. Henry, meanwhile, walked through the garden with his bride, discussing plans for the coming weeks. They talked about crops, irrigation, and how to manage the animals more efficiently. The hidden sister joined in, offering clever ideas and practical solutions. Henry found himself laughing, learning, and realizing that the household had become more than a place to live. It was a place of growth, creativity, and shared purpose. The women were not only companions but teachers and friends, and each day brought new lessons, new joys, and new surprises. As the morning progressed, the women began preparing a simple meal while the brothers completed their outdoor tasks. The kitchen was filled with the aroma of freshly baked bread, simmering stews, and sweet fruits from the orchard. Laughter echoed as the sisters teased each other gently, sharing small stories from their past and reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. The brothers listened, realizing that these stories revealed the depth of character, courage, and resilience each woman possessed. It was a reminder that they were not just participants in a household, they were shaping the life of everyone around them. After the meal, the group gathered to plan the afternoon. Tasks were divided naturally, with each person taking on what suited their strengths. The brothers noticed that the women had grown confident, offering suggestions and solutions without hesitation. The hidden sisters worked seamlessly with their siblings, demonstrating a balance of independence and loyalty. The brothers realized that the household was no longer just a collection of individuals. It was a team, united by trust, respect, and shared experience. Midday brought a moment of quiet reflection. The women gathered near the barn to rest, while the brothers watched from a distance. They marveled at how much the women had grown comfortable with the farm, the work, and each other. The hidden sisters, once secretive and cautious, now laughed freely, shared stories openly, and offered guidance with confidence. The brothers felt pride and gratitude, understanding that the presence of these women had transformed the farm, the household, and their own lives. As afternoon faded into evening, small challenges arose. One of the younger sisters accidentally dropped a basket of vegetables, spilling them across the ground. There was a brief moment of frustration, but the incident was met with laughter rather than anger. The women quickly gathered the vegetables, and the brothers helped, turning the mishap into a moment of teamwork and bonding. It was a lesson in patience, understanding, and the joy of shared labor. Later, the group gathered around the fire, the warmth of the flames reflecting in their faces. Stories were told, jokes shared, and moments of quiet reflection allowed each person to express gratitude and hope. The hidden sisters spoke of their journey, the courage it took to travel in secret, and the joy they now felt in being part of this household. The brothers listened, realizing that life had gifted them not only companions, but individuals who had brought wisdom, courage, and love into their lives. John found himself speaking with the eldest hidden sister, discussing plans for the coming season. Her insights were practical and creative, and he realized that she had become a trusted partner, not just in work but in life. They spoke of dreams, hopes, and ways to improve the farm, and John felt a sense of excitement for the future. He understood that life was richer when shared, and that respect, cooperation, and understanding were more valuable than control or expectation. Tom and the youngest hidden sister walked through the orchard, talking quietly as they checked the trees. Tom felt a gentle warmth in his chest as they laughed together, sharing small stories from the past. He realized that love was not always about grand gestures. It could grow quietly, in shared work, in understanding, and in simple moments of connection. The youngest hidden sister had taught him patience, humility, and the joy of seeing the world through another person's eyes. Meanwhile, William and Henry experienced similar reflections. The women had taught them lessons of resilience, patience, and collaboration. Even small disagreements had been opportunities to learn, and each success had been a moment of shared achievement. The household was no longer a simple arrangement of 4 brothers and 8 women. It had become a family, united not only by circumstance but by respect, love, and shared purpose. As night fell, the farm was quiet under the soft glow of the moon. The fields, the barn, and the orchard seemed peaceful, yet inside the farmhouse, the energy of the day lingered. Conversations continued softly, laughter echoed in corners, and the warmth of shared life filled every room. The brothers reflected on the journey so far, the surprises, the lessons, and the bonds that had formed. They understood that life's true value came from connection, cooperation, and the courage to embrace the unexpected. The women, too, lay awake for a time, thinking about the changes in their lives. The hidden sisters had fulfilled their promise to protect and support their siblings, but they had also discovered a new sense of belonging. The farmhouse was no longer just a place to live. It was a place to grow, to learn, and to create a future together. Each woman had found her place, contributing not only through work but through wisdom, kindness, and courage. The days that followed were filled with routine, yet each day brought new surprises, small triumphs, and moments of laughter. The brothers and women had learned to anticipate each other's needs, to communicate openly, and to work together as a team. The hidden sisters had become inseparable from their siblings, and the household had developed a rhythm that was both efficient and joyful. Work on the farm was no longer a burden. It had become a shared adventure, full of lessons, laughter, and satisfaction. One afternoon, the brothers and women gathered to inspect the harvest from the orchard. The apples were abundant, the vegetables plentiful, and the farm looked healthier than it had in years. Pride filled the hearts of all who stood there. The work of the day, combined with weeks of shared effort, had yielded tangible results. Yet more importantly, the bonds between brothers and women, between sisters, and between all members of the household had grown stronger. Respect, trust, and affection had taken root alongside the crops in the fields. Evenings became a time for storytelling, music, and reflection. The women shared memories of their childhoods, tales of courage, and dreams for the future. The brothers listened, laughed, and sometimes offered advice or shared their own experiences. Each conversation, each shared story, reinforced the sense of family, connection, and mutual respect. Life was no longer about expectation or control. It was about understanding, kindness, and embracing the richness of shared experience. As the weeks passed, the brothers noticed changes not only in the women but in themselves. They had become more patient, more understanding, and more appreciative of the people around them. They had learned that leadership was not about authority, but about listening, guiding, and valuing the contributions of others. The women had brought energy, intelligence, and courage into their lives, transforming not only the farm but the hearts and minds of the brothers. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, the group gathered outside. They stood together, looking over the fields, the orchard, and the farmhouse. There was a sense of peace, accomplishment, and hope. The journey that had begun with surprise and uncertainty had grown into something beautiful, an interconnected household of love, respect, and shared purpose. The brothers understood now that life was unpredictable, full of surprises, and richer than they had imagined. The hidden sisters had changed everything, not through rebellion, but through courage, wisdom, and kindness. They had taught the brothers lessons that would last a lifetime: patience, empathy, the joy of shared work, and the beauty of connection. As night fell and the stars shone above, the farmhouse was quiet but full of life. The brothers and women rested, hearts full of gratitude, hope, and love. The farm, once silent and lonely, was now a place of laughter, learning, and shared growth. The bonds that had formed were strong, built on respect, cooperation, and understanding. Life had changed in ways the brothers could never have planned. The arrival of the hidden sisters had brought surprises, challenges, and lessons, but it had also brought joy, love, and connection. The household had become a true family, bound not only by circumstance but by choice, trust, and the courage to embrace the unexpected.